All right, so today let's take a deep dive into something pretty fascinating, I think. It's Carl Jung's concept of the shadow. Now, when we say shadow, we're not talking about the kind that trails behind you on a sunny day, right?
Right.
This is more about a hidden part of our personality, kind of a psychological underbelly.
Yeah, like a psychological underbelly. Yeah, it's where we kind of, store all those aspects of ourselves we deem unacceptable, all those qualities, the desires and emotions that we sort of repressed because they just didn't fit the ideal image we were, taught to project.
Yeah. So not necessarily bad stuff, though, right? Just stuff we've maybe kind of shoved into the attic of our minds.
Exactly, yeah.
Like in our source material, they mentioned someone who was constantly told to be polite growing up.
Right.
And so their shadow might actually be full of unacknowledged anger or yearning for assertiveness.
Precisely. Yeah, and this is where things get really, really intriguing. Jung believed that ignoring our shadow, it doesn't make it disappear. Like, it can actually lead to some pretty negative consequences.
So it's not like sweeping dust under the rug, more like stuffing it in a pressure cooker.
Oh, that's a very apt analogy. Think about it. All those suppressed emotions, they can manifest in unhealthy ways. Sudden outbursts, projecting our own flaws onto others, even self-sabotaging behaviors, right? It's almost as if the shadow itself is trying to get our attention.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like the pressure just builds and builds until it finds a way to escape, often in ways that we don't intend.
Exactly. And instead of fearing this hidden aspect of ourselves, what if we could learn from it? What if the shadow, despite its intimidating name, actually holds the key to personal growth and becoming, more authentically ourselves?
Okay, now that's a twist. So how do we even begin to approach this shadow? In our source material, they mentioned a few practical strategies.
Yeah. I mean, they emphasize self-reflection as a starting point. Just really paying attention to those moments when you have a strong reaction, almost a visceral reaction to something or someone.
Oh, that reminds me of that example in the source material about being annoyed by overly confident people.
Yeah.
And how that could actually point to a suppressed desire to be more confident in ourselves.
Exactly.
It's like our reactions are clues to what's lurking in our own shadow.
Precisely. Those triggers. Incredibly revealing. And the source also suggested journaling, like as a way to explore those triggers further, a safe space to kind of delve into those feelings without judgment. Ask yourself, what is this reaction telling me about myself? Not from a place of self-criticism, but just genuine curiosity.
So instead of getting stuck in that loop of, I hate when people brag.
Right.
Journaling helps us dig deeper into the why.
Exactly. Unpack those complex emotions. And speaking of unpacking, the source also highlighted, the power of creative expression too. Art, music, writing, these can all be powerful tools for bringing those unconscious aspects into the light.
It's like our shadow can find a voice through creativity, even before we fully acknowledged it, like on a conscious level, sort of like those dreams where you suddenly realize you can fly.
I like that analogy. There's a sense of liberation in both. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about Jung's concept of individuation.
Okay, let's unpack that term a bit.
So individuation is the process of becoming a whole integrated individual. Think of it as a journey of self-discovery, like where you gather all the fragmented pieces of yourself, including those residing in the shadow, and you integrate them to become your truest self.
So facing the shadow, it isn't about conquering some dark force, but embracing it as part of a larger process of becoming whole.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's not about striving for some idealized version of ourselves, but about accepting and integrating all aspects of who we are, even the messy bits.
What's fascinating to me is how this whole concept reframes our understanding of personal growth. It's not about erasing flaws, but about understanding and working with them.
Absolutely. And sometimes those perceived flaws can even turn out to be hidden strengths. Take, for example, someone who's always suppressing their anger.
Right.
They might discover they have a powerful ability to set boundaries and advocate for themselves once they acknowledge and work with that anger.
So the shadow isn't just a repository of negative traits. It's also a wellspring of potential strength and resilience. It makes you wonder what else might be hidden in there just waiting to be discovered.
And that brings us to a pivotal point. What if those aspects of ourselves we've, deemed unacceptable actually hold the key to unlocking our full potential?
That's a really intriguing thought. Almost makes you want to go spelunking into your own psyche.
And perhaps we should. But before we embark on that adventure, let's take a closer look at the potential pitfalls of ignoring our shadow.
All right, so what happens when we keep those basement lights off? What kind of trouble are we brewing down there?
Well, when we try to keep those shadow aspects all hidden away, they can start to control us in ways that we don't even realize. And, our source material gives a really powerful example, the idea of projection.
Projection, like a movie projector.
Not quite, though it does involve, casting something out. Projection is when we see our own unacknowledged qualities in other people and then we react negatively. It's like we're trying to disown those parts of ourselves by attributing them to someone else.
Oh, so that's why I get so irritated when I see someone being passive aggressive. Could it be that I have some unaddressed passive aggressiveness lurking in my own shadow?
It's certainly a possibility worth exploring, and the source pointed out that projection can show up in all sorts of ways.
Right.
We might judge others for being too materialistic when we secretly envy their wealth, right? Or we might criticize someone for being overly emotional when we're actually suppressing our own feelings.
Wow, it's like looking in a funhouse mirror. We're distorting our perception of others because we haven't fully confronted those aspects within ourselves.
Exactly. And this leads to another potential consequence of ignoring the shadow. Self-sabotage.
The master of tripping ourselves up right before the finish line.
Right.
I know that feeling all too well.
Yeah, it's a common struggle. And it often stems from our shadow working against our conscious desires. For example, someone who fears success might unconsciously sabotage their efforts because deep down they don't believe they deserve it.
So a part of us is holding us back even though we consciously want to move forward.
Precisely. And until we acknowledge and integrate those shadow aspects, we'll keep repeating those self-sabotaging patterns. The source also emphasized that our shadow can influence our relationships.
Now, that's a topic I think a lot of people can relate to.
Absolutely. Think about it. If we're not comfortable with certain aspects of ourselves, we might be drawn to partners who embody those traits.
Oh.
Almost as if we're, trying to work through our own issues, through our relationships.
So we might unconsciously choose partners who mirror our shadow qualities, almost like a twisted version of opposites attract.
Exactly. And while those relationships can be incredibly intense, they often lead to conflict and heartache because we're essentially playing out our own internal struggles on an external stage.
It's like projecting those shadow qualities onto a living, breathing person, only to have them reflected right back at us.
Precisely. And that's why understanding the shadow is so crucial for building healthy, fulfilling relationships. It's not about blaming our partners for our own shortcomings, but about taking responsibility for our own shadow work and fostering self-awareness.
That's a really important point. So how do we start to untangle those projections and self-sabotaging patterns? It feels a bit like we're wading through a psychological jungle.
It can feel overwhelming, but remember, it's a journey, not a race. And, the source provides some really helpful guidance. One of the key things they emphasized is the importance of self-compassion.
Okay. So no beating ourselves up for having a shadow in the first place.
Exactly. Remember, everyone has a shadow. It's part of what makes us human.
Right.
And as we've discussed, it's not inherently bad. It just needs to be understood and integrated.
So instead of judging those shadow aspects, we need to approach them with curiosity and kindness.
Precisely. And that's where tools like journaling and creative expression come into play. They offer that safe space to explore those hidden parts of ourselves without, shame or judgment.
It's like we're becoming archaeologists of our own psyches, like brushing away the dust and dirt to uncover the hidden artifacts of our past experiences.
That's a great way to put it. And as we delve deeper, we might find that some of those artifacts, the ones that we initially perceived as dark and scary, actually hold a surprising amount of beauty and wisdom.
So it's not just about unearthing those shadow aspects, but about reframing our perspective on them.
Exactly. And this leads us to a really powerful concept from the source material, the idea of reclaiming our power.
Ooh, that sounds intriguing. How do we reclaim our power through shadow work? So how do we reclaim our power through shadow work? It sounds almost paradoxical, like befriending the monster under the bed.
It's more about recognizing that the monster was was never really a monster to begin with. You know,
Yeah.
it was just a part of ourselves that we hadn't fully understood or integrated, right? And within those shadow aspects often lie untapped potential and strength. Our source uses a really compelling example to kind of illustrate this point. The story of Rosa Parks.
Rosa Parks, the civil rights icon. What does she have to do with shadow work?
Well, on the surface, you know, Rosa Parks might have appeared to be a quiet, unassuming woman, right?
Right.
But beneath that exterior, she possessed an incredible wellspring of courage and conviction.
And you're saying that strength was rooted in her shadow.
Think about the context of the time. You know, the rampant racism and segregation that she faced daily. Those experiences undoubtedly fueled a deep sense of anger and injustice. But instead of letting that anger consume her, you know, she channeled it into a powerful act of defiance that ignited a movement.
So she transformed those shadow emotions into a catalyst for positive change.
Exactly. And that's the potential power of shadow work. It's not about denying or suppressing those difficult emotions, but about acknowledging them, understanding their roots, and finding healthy ways to express them. It's about reclaiming those shadow aspects and integrating them into our wholeness.
That's such a powerful example. It really shifts the perspective from seeing the shadow as something to fear to recognizing it as a source of potential power.
It's about recognizing that even the most challenging aspects of ourselves can be alchemized into something positive, you know? The source also emphasizes that shadow work isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing process of self-discovery.
So it's less about slaying the dragon and more about learning to dance with it.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's about cultivating an ongoing dialogue with ourselves, learning to listen to the whispers of our shadow and integrating those insights into our lives. And remember, this is a journey we don't have to take alone, right?
Right.
Therapy, you know, supportive communities, creative outlets, these can all provide valuable support along the way.
It's comforting to know there are resources and companions for this journey. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the shadow, what's the most important takeaway for our listener?
I think the key message is this: embrace your shadow, explore its depths with curiosity and compassion. You might be surprised by the wisdom and strength you find within.
And remember, the shadow isn't something to be feared, but a part of ourselves to be understood and integrated. It's through that integration that we truly become whole.
Beautifully said. And as our source reminds us, the journey of self-discovery is a lifelong adventure. So be patient with yourself, you know?
Okay.
Celebrate your progress and enjoy the ride.
Thank you for guiding us through this fascinating exploration of the shadow. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling inspired to take a closer look at my own hidden depths.
Me too. And to our listener, we encourage you to do the same. Embrace your shadow, uncover its hidden treasures, and step into the fullness of who you truly are.